Go for it.
Good morning, Bill and Laura.
Good morning.
Lorna, I'm sorry. Thanks for meeting with me tonight. When we spoke a few days ago, I told you that this meeting would take about 25 or 30 minutes. Is that still good for you? Still work? Okay, great. What I did is to use our time most effectively. I just created a little bit of an agenda here so you kind of have a picture of where we're headed. I'm going to talk a little bit about our process at Prudential and how we work with clients, and there's a concept that I'm going to get into called the four cornerstones, and from there we're going to go into a few more concepts. I'll talk a little bit about our compensation model, and then we'll talk about a meeting following up this, and then we'll conclude. How does that sound to you?
Okay.
Okay, great. Before we start here this morning, is there anything particularly important that you would like to get out of today's meeting?
I think one of the main things is looking forward to our retirement planning, and also making sure that we're all set for education for our kids.
Okay, and that's really great. Like most people, retirement is front and center in our minds these days. As we listen to the news, we know that that's more of a burden that's going to fall on us as opposed to our employers and the government in the future. So that's a very good point. And of course, education is very important. You have children?
Yes, two.
How old are they?
Right there in front of you. Johnny is.
Yeah.
10 and 12.
10 and 12 years. And Johnny is your son?
Yes.
How old is he?
12.
12. And I take it your daughter is 10? And what is her name?
Sherry.
Sure, that's great. Okay, so as we go on throughout this process, we'll come back to retirement planning and education. Naturally, if you're like most people, you're going to want to know something about me and my company. Finance and business has always been something that's very important to me. I'm a lawyer by training, but even through my practice of law, I always managed to combine my financial interests into that. My career here at Prudential helps me build upon all of those interests. In fact, when I was still practicing law, I went and got my securities license, so this was just a natural fit for me. You might want to know, Prudential started in 1875, so we've been around about 145 years or so. I'm sure you've heard of Prudential. Most people think of us as an insurance company, but we're just so much more than that. Perhaps you might be interested to know that we're among the top 10 global asset managers in the world. We manage a lot of institutional money, and we're right up there with the BlackRocks of the world and the Vanguards and so forth. In fact, we manage 22 of the top 25 corporate plans, and about 17 or 18 of the top 25 public plans, public pension plans. So we're a financial powerhouse, if you will. You know, I'd like to be modest, but it's something I really like to bring to our clients' attention, because the important thing is to know that just as prudent and responsible as we are in guiding our institutional clients, we take the same attitude when we talk about taking care of our individual clients, people like you. We do that through my company, or my division of Prudential, called the Greater New Jersey Financial Group. We fall under a Prudential umbrella called Prudential Advisors. We're located in East Brunswick, New Jersey, so we're central to the whole state. It's very convenient for our clients, whether they be up in Newark or in Atlantic City or Camden or Trenton, wherever the case may be. And our clients tend to like that accessibility, if you will. Do you have any other questions before we go into the meat, if you will, of this meeting?
No, I didn't know all of that about Prudential. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, and you know, anytime you have a question, you feel free to give me a call, and there's just so much out there that we could offer. And I'll be happy to answer all those questions. But really, I want to spend a lot of the time that we have today, developing a relationship with you and getting to know more about you. Ultimately, I want to develop a relationship with you and your family, your colleagues. Basically, the goal is to become a go-to person so that whenever you have a question or people that are close to you have a question when it comes to finance, you know that you can turn to me. So I want to show off a little bit, if you will, but show you what we could offer as a company also. So with that in mind, I'd like to get time to know you, and what we do is we work in a cycle in getting to know our clients. We focus on your financial goals and objectives naturally. That's what we do first and foremost. It's important that we learn. Thank you. It's important that we find out among us that it makes sense to work together, and that we agree that happens. So what we do is we start by asking you questions, trying to understand your situation, listening to you first and foremost, and then providing answers to your questions. Once we've done that, I work with a team in my office. We have dozens of people that are specialists in just about anything financial that you could imagine. So depending on what your interests are, what your concerns are, we go back and we collaborate. And then we come back to you and we give you a bit of an analysis, strategy, or a roadmap, if you will. And then we decide to what extent it makes sense to go forward. Now, once we have done that, in almost every case, our clients find it a benefit in us reviewing on a very periodic basis. We recommend every 4 to 6 months, but it's important to know that whenever you have a financial question or whenever a life event occurs, you could just pick up the phone and we can start pointing you in the right direction. We can guide you. How does that sound to you?
Sound good?
Okay, any questions about that?
I know.
Okay, so then once that's done, then we review the cycle. So once we review, and then we come back and we constantly make adjustments to your strategic plan. I would like to spend the balance of our time, if you're open to it, getting to know a little bit about you and your financial situation. The way in which we do that revolves around a concept called the four cornerstones of financial planning. Typically, most people have similar concerns, and among these groups that I'm showing you here, we broadly call them future concerns that most people have. And for example, we spoke about retirement earlier, and under the category of investments, retirement is front and center. Most of us spend our lifetimes going up the proverbial mountain, if you will, but we tend not to pay as much attention as to how to get down the mountain when the time comes for us to retire. Right? With so many of us have, over the years have neglected that. We've identified that as an important issue, and what we help you do is to make sure you guarantee your retirement in such a way that you don't outlive your savings. And we find that most people have a great value to that. The next part of future concerns that just about everybody has revolves around their cash management and their liabilities, their savings. We want to make sure that you have enough money for a so-called rainy day funds, so that if an emergency were to arise, it just doesn't blow up your financial plan. You have enough money set aside to get you through the difficult, challenging times. And so again, that's another very important part of the four cornerstones. Perhaps just as important as the other two is the area of protection. And this common future concern essentially involves insurance. basically, if you could have the best investments, you could have the best mutual funds, you might be a real estate investor and you have the best real estate investments, but if something were to happen to you where you got injured or you got sick and you couldn't go back to work, or you were to die prematurely, without proper protection planning, your financial goals could never be achieved. The whole plan would blow up. So basically, when we talk about this type of planning, we talk about insurance in such a way to take some of the risk that you're shouldering and put it on an insurance company. So it's a very interesting part of the whole scenario, if you will. And then finally, we talk about taxes and estate planning. Now, we're not estate planning people per se, we're not tax advisors per se, but we find on occasion when people have not set out a well thought out estate plan, it could just blow up their financial plan. So even though we don't do these kind of things, we stay on top of you to make sure you're pointed in the right direction. And if you need any help with that, we can always make recommendations as to the proper way to go. And it's the same kind of idea with tax planning. When we cannot really give tax advice per se, but we can help you develop strategies that will help you pay taxes when they're due, defer taxes in many cases, and in even other cases, pay no taxes at all. When we get that whole balanced approach there, that's what we're referring to about tax planning. So how does that sound to you?
It's a lot of good information.
Okay. These are basically the areas that we concentrate. Within that, they're called the 4 cornerstones of financial planning. It's a very broad category. But in order to get to know you, if you're like most people, you probably have a variety of investments. And if you're open to it, I'd like to just review that with you briefly. I have my client